large caramel macchiato with an extra shot and whipped cream, please.
Coming up.
Wait, hold on. How much is that?
$4.85.
Okay, better drop the extra shot. What does that make it?
$4.20.
Better make it a small. What does that make it?
$3.30.
Better drop the whipped cream. What does that make it?
Less calories.
Oh my God, and he flew all the way to New York to tell me that. That's so romantic.
It's beautiful, really.
You're not even allowed to leave the state.
What's that now?
It's the Al Travis Show. Speaking of lattes, what a great idea. Why don't you give up a latte today and instead go to save.org. It's Suicide Prevention on the Air Day today. Go to save.org, hit the donate button, give your $5, $8, what it is, you people that drink coffee anymore. Hit that button and give it to Save. Well, you guys are laughing. We'll talk. I've never had a coffee. I know they're expensive, but I don't drink them. Give it to save.org. It's all doubled, so then somebody's like getting almost 2 lattes worth of giving. Eric, I don't have a clue. What is a latte? Do you drink coffee? Do you do one of those? Are you one of those guys?
I'm too cheap to buy a latte, so I just stick with the regular stuff.
Well, we'll find out about these other two then. I'm going to go to Sophia first, or only for the only reason she's on the top of the stack on my Zoom link here. Sophia Laurenzi, thank you for being on the program. You a latte gal? Do you do the frothy stuff?
I'm a latte gal on very special occasions, but the caffeine makes me pretty crazy, so you don't want to see it.
Okay. It's good to know your limits. I like that. Okay. You're on the board with SAVE. Can you give us a little background on you? What do you do for a living? How do you get attached to SAVE? Give us a little background.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Sophia Laurenzi, as you said. I am a writer and journalist. I am based in Brooklyn, and I got connected through SAVE, actually through some of my writing that I've done. A lot of the inspiration for things I write about, whether it's like a reported piece or personal essays, comes from the loss of my dad to suicide in 2018. And that really inspired me to change a lot in my life, but change my career and be much more vocal about this topic and this issue through my writing. And I connected with Eric after a piece that I wrote about suicide prevention and my perspective as a loss survivor, and recently joined the board. So I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, if this isn't too personal, you don't look that old. How old were you when this happened with your father?
I was 23 when my father died. Yeah.
Okay. So you get a hold of the board, and you're now on the board. Let's find out from Shannon. Shannon Carbone, our other guest with us today. You are also on the board. Are you a latte drinker?
No, not usually. Once a season, I'll do a pumpkin spice latte with half the pumpkin flavoring because it's too sugary. But no, just normal coffee with oat milk for me is.
Are you not on the? With you watching enough television, aren't you on the impression everybody's drinking lattes? I thought I was like the only guy who didn't do coffee. No one on the board is drinking any of this stuff. Boy,
it's too sugary. Too sugary.
Boy, it's got to be harder to be Starbucks than I thought. Okay. Shannon Carbone, you are also a member of the board on SAVE. Mm-hmm. What do you do, and how did you get attached?
Yeah, so I'm an account executive for a local print company here in Minneapolis, Point B Solutions, and I was connected with SAVE. I saw actually a LinkedIn post as I was doing a little bit of social selling, and a former board member, Patrick Klinger, had made a post about SAVE, and I hadn't known Patrick, but I just blindly reached out to him and asked if he would meet me for coffee, not a latte. And so he and I got connected. I also lost my dad by suicide in 2006. I was 22 years old at the time. And as I, moved later into life and became a parent myself, my grief really changed. So we know grief isn't a linear process. It's very messy and all over the board. And of course, when I became a parent 9 years ago, that really changed my grief. And I felt like I needed to be a little bit louder in the space and just become more involved. And so, Patrick so kindly said yes to somebody he had never known. And that was back in 2022. So I'm newer to the board at SAVE, but really happy that I'm here.
Do you mind discussing it just for a minute if we can? You talk about it not being a linear path, the grief that you go through. Mm-hmm. We were talking about it in the last half hour with our our relationship guru. Can you name? Are you able? I have three feelings now. I understand: I'm happy, sad, and fear. So I couldn't probably describe those feelings. Can you go through what you went through? I mean, from 2006 when you found out, and just can you give us some names to some of those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially it was pure panic. It was like, oh my gosh, what has happened? And how do I keep going in life? So that brought up a lot of fear of like, how am I supposed to do life?
Yeah.
Carrying this really heavy weight with me all the time. And I made a decision at the time. I was teaching 10th grade English, actually. And I made a decision very early on that I wasn't going to let this ruin my spirit and the person that I am, and that I needed to figure out how to still be in the world. And so, going back to maybe an old adage of the life you live is the lesson you teach. So I was pretty raw. I mean, it took a few years for me to actually share my story a little bit, but once I started talking about it and feeling comfortable about it, I realized that it gave other people a voice too. And maybe, if I was talking about it and being brave and feeling uncomfortable sometimes, that other people would do that too. And, that just goes into reducing that stigma that it's okay to not be okay. And we need to be okay talking about it.
If you don't mind me, Doctor, filling you a little bit here. So you're
Sure.
going
No,
along,
no.
you're getting through, and you had to a point where you were managing it. I presume you had your who you were, but you say having your child whooped all that stuff back up again. I mean, what was that feeling? It's like you've gotten a level of normalcy, but by having a child, which will mess everybody up, by the way. Not saying don't have kids, but it'll mess anybody up. But it brought back those feelings. You can tell us how that brought all that back for you.
Yeah. When I had our daughter, Joe, initially it was like, of course, you're just so excited, right? But then it brought up these very painful experiences because my dad wasn't here to enjoy this part of my life with me. He's missing out on being a grandparent, which is very sad to me. And, just building those moments with your parent and not having him here. So I think I re-entered sort of like a sadness zone with my grief. And then the anger came back. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I want you to fight. And then I found a fight in myself. Like I have to fight for my kids to be the best version of me, not just for me, but for them, because I want to be here to experience the world with them and teach them and help them learn. And so, yeah, a lot of sadness and anger too.
All right, Sophia, if we can go with yours as well, the feelings that you went through. I'm looking at it. I'm not trying to do the math in my head, but you would have been roughly the same age as Shannon when she went through this. Can you give us your immediate? I mean, you don't have 30 years worth of it, but give us your initial feelings and thoughts, and can you name them?
Yeah, I think now I can name them much better than I could at the time. Initially, I was in just such a state of shock. And my dad was somebody who had a lot of mental health issues and had struggled with depression. And I looked up to a lot because he was very open about that. A lot of my friends still credit, like, he was the first adult they knew who described what depression was, like going to therapy, getting help. So I think in some ways that made it more shocking that someone who knew they struggled and was seeking help could still die by suicide. So for a long time, I would say at least a year, I was in just a real state of disbelief and sort of dissociation. And I think I have found with having a suicide loss, I felt very protective of him. I think that's part of the stigma, is that, we still view dying by suicide as some kind of failure, as different from other kinds of death. And I loved my dad so much, and I wanted to protect him, and I wanted to just not have a sort of tainted image of him or others to have that. So it wasn't until about a year after that I started to have more complicated feelings. Like, actually, I am really angry. Actually, I do, there are mistakes that you made, not that, but like letting him be a more complicated figure. But it was hard for me to do that because I think his death made me want to be ultra protective of his memory and who he was and is to me. So it's evolved a lot. I try to speak and write about that messiness of like how there's so much love and also there's complications, and also two things can be true. You can be seeking the best care in the world and you can still die of this disease that we're still learning a lot about, or die by suicide that we're still learning a lot about.
If we can, I've got to go to break, but you keep talking about your writing and reading, and I'm fascinated by it. I would love to. How would one go get what you're writing? Is there what do you kids do, blog or something, or is that old school? What?
Yeah, you can. I'm on Substack, which is like where a lot of writers are as of late, but I'm also have a website. A lot of my work has been published. The piece that Eric and I connected on, I wrote for Suicide Prevention Month last year's in Time, so that might be the most relevant piece to check out.
Well, I don't know what a Substack is. I can go look that up. But the website, or what's your website? Can you promote it? Can let somebody want to take a read?
Sure. SophiaLaurenzi.com. Nice and easy.
Yeah, real easy. I had to ask how to pronounce your name when I was reading it. We'll go to break. We'll be back after this and see what help there is out for folks who are left.
September 24th is Suicide Prevention on the Air Day in Minnesota. Every dollar raised supports SAVE, Suicide Awareness Voices of Education, providing education, advocacy, and programs that save lives. And on September 24th, your gift will go twice as far because every donation will be matched dollar for dollar. Visit save.org to see our work, learn how you can help, and donate. Remember, September 24th, because every voice can save a life.
When the stakes are high at the Minnesota Capitol, you need more than a lobbyist, you need a partner. At Momentum Advocacy, we bring nearly 90 years of combined experience in government relations, public affairs, and strategic communications. From nonprofits to national corporations, we help organizations navigate Minnesota's political landscape with integrity, insight, and results. Whether you need legislative champions or headlines, Momentum Advocacy delivers. For more, visit momentum-advocacy.com. Momentum Advocacy, your friends at the Capitol.
If it's your turn to host a game, Grandpa's Barbecue suggests you try something different. Put out the perfect barbecue flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. Add it to your ribs, dip the meatballs, or drench your wings in the original flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. It isn't too hot or spicy, fruity or smoky or whatever. Grandpa's Barbecue. Available in select stores and online at grandpasbarbecueshop.com.
Don't need to ask him his opinion more than once. Al Travis on The Al Travis Show.
Really love having these guests on the program with us. It is, of course, a big day today, Suicide Prevention on the Air Day. Go to save.org, donate what you can, and it will be doubled today. And we appreciate the foundation for doing that. Really glad to have our guests on, Sophia Laurenzi and Shannon Carbone. I asked this question because I don't know. I presume there's support groups for everybody everywhere for everything. So I presume there's something there. But suicide, like Shannon said, it's just weird. There's not like the 5 steps of grief, right? 1, 2, 3, and then you get her done and you can move on. But I look at Sophie, listen to the Shannon story, and you're trailing behind by 15 years, but can a Shannon help a Sophie out? Is there this special, I don't know, bond is the right word, between survivors that can help each other through the craziness, or is every path so different it doesn't help? Hey, Shannon, you're shaking your head. Am I nuts here? Is there something to it? Is there something from SAVE?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, being a suicide loss survivor, I think it's really easy for us to be standing in a room with 100 people and still feeling very alone in our journey, but at the same time feeling very connected through organizations like SAVE and, different support groups for suicide loss survivors. And again, I just think it's so important to be able to connect. Sophia and I are connected because we've both lost a parent many years apart from each other. But I do think there is tremendous value in connecting with people that have a similar story, and just knowing sadly, we aren't alone, because this affects so many people in the world today.
I forgot Eric was still here. Eric, thanks for being here. Don't you have this lost team thing? I mean, don't you have a group or something like that? What is the lost team?
Yeah, so actually, first of all, Shannon and Sophia point out something very important, right? Is that suicide loss survivors, one of those connections is to remind one another that they aren't alone, right? That this is an experience that unfortunately is shared by far, far too many of us in the world. And so SAVE has an initiative that we launched a couple months ago called Lost Teams, which stands for Local Outreach to Suicide Survivors. It's really intended to be a team of folks who are suicide loss survivors themselves, who act as first responders, if you will, for someone who is newly bereaved that's experienced a suicide, because oftentimes the complexity of suicide is so much different than the loss that we find ourselves suffering in other ways. And so having somebody who can come to your home and talk to you about what are those complex factors that you're dealing with, what are those situations that are unique to a suicide loss that may be different than someone who dies in a car accident or from a chronic illness. So, there's a lot of resources at save.org. One of the most important resources is other suicide loss survivors. Individuals who've been through this journey, who are continuing on this journey, are really the most powerful allies and advocates that you can have at this moment in your life. And as Shannon points out, years later, there are many of us who had deep losses of friends and family members for decades and decades and decades, and continuing to have that connection, that community, enormously important.
I love that. Sophia, just out of curiosity, if they had the lost teams back in when this affected you, would have helped a bit, I bet?
Yeah, I think having that community and connection and systems too, like systems in place, whether it's personal community-based systems, structural systems, is so necessary, because suicide and suicide loss can be such a lonely, sort of siloed experience for everyone who goes through it.
Shannon, how about yourself? You see what that's going to do? You're on the board. I presume you voted for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important process. It's an important piece of work that we do. Just supporting one another and having these various resources on all different levels. We also have the Green Bandana Project that focuses on support in local schools. I believe junior high, high school, and a few college campuses as well. But we have designated people on staff that are really fighting hard for this space as well. Because part of the work we do is also, preventing suicides. And so being able to have these different systems and support groups help too.
I am so sorry. We are out of time for this hour. It's a clock thing. I'm out of time. I've got to fly, but both Sophia and Shannon, please don't let Eric keep you from coming back on this program. We do it. Everybody's told you once a month. We love having you. You guys can come back on. We'll talk about the bandana project. There's so much. We're going to do 3 hours of radio here, Dane. We're not going to cover it all. There's so much. Appreciate you both for being on the program. Eric as well. More after this on the Al Travis Show.